One reason why Ayanokoji's presence in the school is considered cheating is because no one could possibly compete with him. With the white room education that was engraved inside him ever since he was a baby, it's nearly impossible to beat him even if all the class leaders join hands to fight him. Ayanokoji is fundamentally different compared to the others, and it wouldn't change anything even if the class leader also receive an education in the white room. They probably have a chance to survive, but it wouldn't be strange if they ended up broken just like many others. So, let's take a look at it one by one. Since Sakayanagi has a disability ever since she was born, it wouldn't be strange if Atsuomi, as the one responsible for running the white room, chose to reject her application. While it was never mentioned clearly, Sakayanagi probably has a congenital heart disease that made any hard physical activity impossible for her. With that in mind, baby Sakayanagi will need extra care to be raised, and throwing her to be raised in the white room doesn't sound like a good choice. Sakayanagi is quite an interesting case, because back in Volume 0, Atsuomi once asked Chairman Sakayanagi if he wanted to put his baby in the white room or not. Back then Chairman Sakayanagi refused, but if he had chosen yes and trusted Atsuomi with his baby, Atsuomi wouldn't have been able to refuse him easily even if Sakayanagi ended up having a disability. Since the white room's motto is to make the best out of the poorest DNA, Atsuomi will probably use Sakayanagi as a special case and make a special exception for her. She wouldn't be involved in any physical training, and would solely focus on developing her mind. Since Sakayanagi is a natural-born genius, and we already saw how great she had become even with her disability, just a bit of white room training could probably bring her to an entirely different level. If Sakayanagi was raised in the white room, she will most likely become more wicked and ruthless than what we know today. It wouldn't be strange if she could surpass Ayanokoji in terms of intellect, but that is a very gray area to judge because there is no strong standard to use as a comparison. All I could say is Sakayanagi could survive the white room as long as it's not about physical training. Ichinosa might have a lot of potential as we know her today. However, her intellect is nowhere near Sakayanagi, and her physical ability is not something worth considered. If we put her in the 4th generation alongside Ayanokoji, she will most likely only survive for a few years and then end up broken, just like Yuki. And since Ichinosa could get depressed just because of stealing a hairpin, it's highly possible she will end up traumatized after she leaves the white room, just like Yuki. Ichinosa's greatest strength is her emotional quotient, but that is not something needed in the white room, especially in the 4th generation. However, it's undeniable that Ichinosa also excels academically, and her intelligence is clearly superior compared to her generation. So if Ichinosa was placed in the 5th generation where they were taught how to communicate and understand each other better, Ichinosa would have a high chance to survive. The reason why Ayanokoji is the only 4th generation survivor is not because the curriculum was too hard, but mostly because of Ayanokoji himself. Ayanokoji made it clear in Volume 0 that the difficulty of white room test was raised according to the top score, so as long as Ayanokoji keeps getting a perfect score, the ceiling will keep increasing, and the others won't be able to catch up. That's why the 4th generation is impossible to follow unless the student has more potential than Ayanokoji. Ichinosa most likely would survive the 5th generation, but if she is placed in the 4th generation alongside Ayanokoji, she will just become another Yuki, and not even Ayanokoji could help her in that place. Whether she could survive longer than Yuki is unknown, but she will still end up exactly like her. Ryuen is a bit hard to predict, since he doesn't have a remarkable academic or physical ability, which is the most important skill to survive in the white room. It is also unclear if Ryuen's personality that we know today is the result of genetic or social influence. At least we could say that Ryuen's ability to not feel fear is something that he has had inside him ever since the beginning, and if Ryuen has it, his chance to survive in the white room will increase tenfold. Ryuen doesn't have a high academic score, and it doesn't mean he is stupid, but it's because he doesn't really care about textbook knowledge and prefers street knowledge instead. However, Ryuen doesn't hate to read or study. If we compare his academic score from the 2nd and 3rd years, Ryuen actually shows some improvement, so getting a good score is not going to be a big problem for him. Ryuen's physical ability is another thing. Even though he is not as strong as Albert or Shizaki, Ryuen's persistence is the reason why he always came out on top in almost every battle. I could see Ryuen developing his own method of fighting even though no one will teach him about it in the White Room, and since he cannot feel any fear, not even the pressure from the adult would stop him. However, Ryuen victory in the White Room would be totally different if Ayanokoji was also there with him. Since Ayanokoji could give him a near-death experience, Ryuen could probably break when he realizes he will never win against Ayanokoji, and since the White Room doesn't allow any failure, he will get expelled without any chance to get revenge. I don't think the instructor would allow them to go that far, but that is still a possibility. It's worth noted that Ryuen could probably maintain his original personality even in the White Room, but he still wouldn't be able to survive that far as long as Ayanokoji is still there. Ryuen will once again realize the difference between them, and even if he can stand again after losing once, he will never keep up with Ayanokoji. They are just born different, and unlike in ANHS, no one will support Ryuen in the White Room, and that loss will definitely haunt Ryuen forever. Harikita's situation will probably be the same as Ichinosa if she ever ends up in the White Room. However, Harikita could probably survive longer than Ichinosa because of two reasons. First, she has better physical ability compared to her, and if we look at Manabu, Harikita's strong body is probably part of her genetics. And the second reason is Harikita's cold personality. Since the White Room makes sure to erase every unnecessary thing from their student, it's become common that each student develops a sense of individuality without caring for the others, because at the end of the day, the only one who could help them is just themselves. Ichinosa's personality doesn't suit the White Room environment, but since Harikita used to be a loner who did everything by herself, she will have an easier time adapting in the White Room. The rest is basically the same as Ichinosa. Harikita will end up getting expelled, although she probably wouldn't be traumatized that much. Harikita could probably survive the 5th generation curriculum, but in the 4th gen, she would only survive for a few years. Once again, the problem lies in Ayanokoji. It will be better if we compare Harikita with Ryuen, because she could probably survive longer than him. Unlike Ryuen, Harikita wouldn't be broken that much even though she got beaten near death, which means she could maintain a constant performance. However, if Ryuen could rise up from his depression and set Ayanokoji as his motivation goal, Ryuen would definitely survive longer. But of course, it's all just a probability based on their high schooler version, and we will never know how much their environment shapes their current personality. Even though Atsuomi said the White Room's purpose is to make the best out of the poorest DNA, most of the White Room's success case heavily rely on inherent talent, while Ayanokoji is simply an anomaly. Students like Manabu or even Koenji achieve remarkable feats with their talent, but the White Room could shape that talent to another level. Simply speaking, as long as Ayanokoji doesn't exist, all the best students that we know today should have a chance to survive the White Room, even if it's the 4th generation curriculum. At the end, whether the White Room could create an artificial genius is still left to debate, because from the way Atsuomi is running the White Room, it's all about the student's talent, while the untalented will just end up broken and traumatized.